Awakayanja, Sequoia Crosswhite in my chapelo. Hello, children. My name is Sequoia Crosswhite, and it gives me great honor to be here with you today. Today I'm here to share with you a story about the Lakota Shiotanka and some music. First, I'd like to thank the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee, Indian Education, the Ocheti Shakowee Program, and the Rapid City School District for having me here today. And to start off with, a honky honey. A long, long time ago, there was a little boy playing around in a fire. Now you know what possibly could happen when you play around in a fire. And this little boy, he was taking pine needles and throwing them into the fire and watching them burn up. And he's throwing pine cones into the fire and watching the pine cones burst open as they get so hot. And each time he was throwing something into the fire, he's getting closer and closer to the fire. Well, before you know it, he slipped into the fire. Well, luckily enough, his grandma, was there to save him, but she didn't save all of him, for his face got badly burnt. So his grandmother, she took some pejuta, some medicine, and she covered his face with it. And when she felt like his wounds had healed up enough for him to go outside to shkata, to go play, she let him go outside to go shkata. But with his wounds healing up, they left a lot of scars behind. And so when he went to go find the other Wakayaja to shkata, to go play, the other children, they made fun of him. They called him a jichi. They called him a monster. Well, his she seen this from a distance, and she had pity on him. So she called her Takoja, her grandson, back to her, and she made him a hide mask to cover up his face. The rest of Oyate, the rest of the people in the camp there, they had pity on him as well. And so as he was growing up, they asked little responsibilities of him because they knew he'd have a lonely life. And so as a boy, he's growing up to be a young man. He watched the other men and the other warriors move off to other camps to start families of their own. And now a young man with a scar on his face, he watched as his oldest brother comes back from a camp and brings with him a new wife and a child. Well, the young man with the scar on his face, he thinks to himself that maybe he could be like his oldest brother and he could find love. And if he finds love, then maybe he could have a family of his own. And if he has a family of his own, he could do something good for the Oyate and his life would serve as a purpose. And so he went to his oldest brother, and he went to the other warriors, the other men, and he asked for their advice into finding Tachila, to find love. And they all looked at him and they said, Wa'ea, Tachila shni. You have no love. Your face is too ugly. But the young man with the scar on his face knew that they weren't the only ones that could give him advice. In fact, the best advice would come from the elders. So he went to the elders and he asked them, how could he go about to find love? And the elders, they told him, well, check ya, pray to Wakan Tonka. And if Wakan Tonka sees it fit, then love will come your way. So he went back to his lodge. And he started to Wochekya. He started to pray. And he was praying so hard that he fell asleep. And while he was sleeping, he had a dream. In this dream, it showed him grabbing a certain marked arrow, a certain marked wahinkpa, and shooting it into the sky 7 times. And after the 7th shot, it returned back to the beginning of the dream again. And so the next day, he grabbed his bow and he grabbed that certain marked arrow and he stepped outside his lodge and he strapped up his bow. And he grabbed that certain marked arrow. And at first, he had a hard time pulling back that bowstring because the drawback in those days could be up to 90 pounds. And so as he struggled pulling back that arrow to let it go, he finally got it back enough and he let it go. Well, it took him all day to find that arrow. And at the end of the day, when he found that arrow, he realized he'd have to shoot it 6 more times to fulfill the dream he had. And each time he would take a shot, it would take him another day away from camp. So by the 7th shot, he was 7 days away from camp. And Mokoche Shicha Ekta, he was in the Badlands. And while in the Badlands, he had no food and no water. And with no food and no water, his stomach started rumbling, and his mouth became dry. And he sat outside the rock there, holding on to his bow and holding on to that arrow. And he started thinking to himself that maybe he made a mistake following that dream. Just like he made a mistake when he was a little boy playing around in the fire. And as he started thinking to himself, sadness started to build up inside. And as that sadness built up inside, he started to chia, he started to cry. And as he was crying, he looked down, and he watched his tears getting swallowed up into the desert floor. And as he's looking at his tears being swallowed up, he sees the shadows of birds flying above him. And these birds flying above him are not eagles, but in Lakota we say hecha, turkey vultures. And as he let the sadness build up, he starts thinking to himself, maybe the only good thing he can do in this world is lay over and die and become food for the turkey vultures. And as he's sitting there feeling sorry for himself, another bird comes flying along and sits upon his shoulder. In Lakota we call this bird a waknuka, a woodpecker. And the woodpecker says to the young man with the scars on his face, "You have no faith in Wakan Tonka?" And the young man with the scars on his face says, "Yes, I do. I've been waiting for something to happen." And the Waknuka says to him, "What you've been waiting for is happening right now. Let me show you something." And so the Waknuka, the woodpecker, starts to explain that when the Creator was creating his kind, they made their beaks narrow so they can get at the bugs inside of trees to keep a natural balance in the forest. And that with their narrow beaks, it was hard for them to make a whistle like the rest of the singing birds, but they could caw like the crows. And the woodpecker explained that sometimes when they're getting their meal, there'll be a branch that's really low to the ground. And with that branch really low to the ground, little bugs start eating away at one end. And it gets so crowded that they start going on to the other end. And as they're eating away at the branch, the woodpecker gets on top of the branch and he starts getting himself a buffet of bugs. And as the woodpecker's eating away and the last bug's eaten, unfortunately that branch has died. But the most important thing is that the tree is still alive and can grow a new one. But with that branch dead and all hollowed out from the bugs, and with holes made from the woodpecker getting its meal, that woodpecker has a nice full belly. He sits on top of that branch, and he stretches out his feathers to the side. And he waits for a nice warm breeze to come across. And as that warm breeze comes across, he lifts up his feathers across the holes he made getting his meal, and he makes a melody. And for that little bit of time, the Waknuka, the woodpecker, can sing like the rest of the singing birds. And so the woodpecker, he brings the young man with the scar on his face one of these shiotonkas, one of these branches, and he shows him how to play it, and he shows him how to make another one. And he tells him to go outside of his camp and to sit out there and play with the good feelings in his heart and good thoughts on his mind, and maybe love will come his way. So the young man with the scar on his face, he makes it outside of his camp, and he starts to play. And the first songs that come out are kind of sad because he's had such a lonely life up to this time. And he starts to play. And as he's playing, there's one wee koshkalaka. There's one young lady out there, and she's gathering up all the natural fruits and vegetables that are coming to harvest during the end of July and first part of August. And as she's getting up that harvest, she hears this melody coming from a distance. And curiosity gets the best of her. She's never heard a bird sing like that before. And so she's got to see where this music is coming from. And as she gets closer, the music gets louder. She sees a silhouette of a man standing there. And from a distance, it looks like he's praying with the sacred chanupa, with the pipe. And as she gets closer, she sees that he's wearing a hide mask. And the melody that she's hearing is coming from the branch in between his hands. And as she recognizes the man standing there, the first thought that comes to her mind is that she can run back to this man's camp and tell his Unchi that she doesn't have to worry anymore, for she's found her Dakoja. Then something else overwhelms her. She starts to remember who he is, and she remembers when they were little and when she used to make fun of him because he had scars on his face. And as she listens to the music that he's playing, another feeling overwhelms her. She starts to realize that here this young man with the scar on his face is so ugly on the outside, but as he plays, he has something beautiful coming from the inside. And she starts to fall in love with him. And from there, with the young man on the scar on his face as he plays the flute, love starts coming his way. And from that unification of man and woman, we get our Lakota Shiotanka. And there is a modern Lakota Shiotanka story with lessons of days of old. And the first song I'll play for you is the first one that came to me. It's called Ikchewi Chasha Chea, a common man's cry. The second one I'll play for you is entitled Wagnuka Olawan, a woodpecker song. And imagine my fingers are not fingers, but the feathers and the wings of a woodpecker going back and forth on the holes it made getting its meal. And the next song I'll play for you is inspired by Wetu, by springtime. And in springtime is a very exciting time. And the old Lakota ways and the Lakota ways now, springtime is like the beginning of the new year because all the new leaves are coming on the trees. The birds that flew down south for the winter are coming back. All the animals that were in hibernation are coming back alive. There's a lot of new rejuvenation when it comes to springtime. The rains come back again. And so there's so much excitement going on. And so with that, I composed this song where I play two flutes at the same time. So here's springtime. I have one more song for you guys, and I wanted to show you all how I had the guitar come in as I was telling you the story and playing my flute on top of it at the same time. And this is a perfect example on how two things from two different parts of the world and two different times can come together and be one. In Lakota, we call this a chanka hotun, or a guitar. This is of modern times. And then we have a shiotanka, which is from the past but still alive today. And with my loop pedal, I am able to loop my guitar, and then I can play my flute on top of it. So this last song I would like to share with you, it goes out to the elders and the ones who've lived in before us. again, it's been a pleasure to be here with you guys in classroom and a virtual experience. I'd like to thank all the teachers out there for being teachers, because you make such a difference in all the growing minds out there. And I'd like to leave you with this saying that we say before we enter our ceremonies and at the end of our prayers. And we believe this from the bottom of our hearts. It is mitakuye oyase, meaning we are all related. So no matter what color your skin is, your hair color or eye color, we are all related. So we don't judge each other by what we look like or where we come from. We judge each other by our character, and character always counts. So wopila tanke chichapalo, doksha ake wachink talo. Until next time, I hope you guys enjoy the rest of your day and look forward to seeing you.